Imagine this, an ex-engineer turned rapper performing underground hip-hop tracks about corruption and inequality. Now imagine that same rapper becoming the prime minister of an entire country. That's exactly what's happening in Nepal. A 35-year-old former rapper named Balendra Shah, popularly known as Balen, has just led a political earthquake in the Himalayan nation. Until a few years ago, very few people outside Nepal had ever even heard of him. And as of this week, he has just won a landslide general election, beating four-time Prime Minister by nearly 50,000 votes, in a country sandwiched directly between two global giants, India and China. So the question the world is asking now is simple. What has happened and what does it mean for a geopolitically sensitive piece of real estate in Asia? Let's start from September 2025. The people of Nepal set fire to their own parliament. 74 people died, the Prime Minister fled, and out of the ashes of that uprising rose a political movement led by Nepal's Gen Z. An interim PM took charge, an election was conducted, and now we have the new potential face of the country. So who exactly is Balen? How did a rapper suddenly rise to power? Why are young people across Nepal rallying behind him? And what could his leadership mean for the region, especially for India? This is the story of how Nepal's political system was shaken by a Gen Z revolution. Who is Balen? Balendra Shah was born in Kathmandu in 1990. He didn't begin his career in politics. He was actually trained as a structural engineer, completing higher studies in India before returning to Nepal. In Nepal's youth culture, Balen became known for something very different: hip-hop. He began writing rap that wasn't about money or fame, but about corruption, about inequality, about the broken systems around him. His first single, Sadak Balak, dropped in 2012 when he was still a year short of finishing school. He had his breakthrough in 2013 in Nepal's underground rap scene, often called Nep-hop. Almost overnight, Balen became a national sensation. His delivery was sharp, his content was political, and unlike most Nepali celebrities of the time, he refused to sanitize his message. His 2019 track, Balidan, meaning sacrifice, has over 12 million views on YouTube. He now has close to 1 million YouTube subscribers, 3.5 million Facebook followers, 1 million on Instagram, and 400,000 on X. For context, that is a digital audience that dwarfs every traditional politician in Nepal. His music was different from the typical rap scene. Instead of party songs, Balen raps about corruption, inequality, political failure, and the frustrations of urban youth. Gradually, Balen built something unusual. Not just a musical fan base, but a politically conscious youth following. For many young Nepalis, his lyrics sounded like the voice of their generation. A generation frustrated by unemployment, corruption, and a political system dominated by leaders several decades older than them. His foray into politics. In 2022, Balen made a decision that surprised even his supporters. He entered politics. Not through a major political party, but as an independent candidate on his own merit for the mayor of Kathmandu. And then something remarkable happened. He won. He became the first independent mayor of Kathmandu, defeating candidates from Nepal's largest political parties. This was widely seen as the first sign that Nepal's political landscape was changing. Balen is now also pursuing a PhD in traditional infrastructure conservation at the Kathmandu University. Why does this matter? Because when he became mayor, he didn't just make political promises about fixing roads and clearing garbage. He understood the technical reality of what fixing them would require. As mayor, Balen focused on issues that citizens actually encounter every day: garbage management, traffic congestion, illegal construction, and urban infrastructure. Supporters praised his aggressive anti-corruption stance, but critics also accused him of heavy-handed enforcement against street vendors and squatters. Still, one thing became clear. Balen was no longer just a rapper. He had become a political phenomenon. By 2025, frustration with Nepal's political elite had reached a boiling point. The country faced several deep structural problems: high youth unemployment, heavy dependence on remittances, political instability, and widespread corruption. Nepal has had more than 14 governments in the past 17 years. On September 4th, 2025, Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, a 74-year-old communist leader who had served 4 terms in power, ordered the shutdown of 26 social media platforms in Nepal. The stated reason? These platforms had not registered under the government's new communication rules. For Nepal's Gen Z, educated, connected, already furious about corruption and unemployment, this was the last straw. But what looked like just a social media protest very quickly became something else. It became a referendum on 2 decades of governance failure. Nepal's average annual income was approximately 1400 US dollars. Meanwhile, the families of the ruling elite were posting their wealth on social media. The Nepo kid trend, showcasing luxurious lifestyles of politicians' children, had been going viral. Millions of young Nepalis were leaving the country every year to work in Gulf states and other countries in Southeast Asia, sending money home because there was nowhere to actually work at home. The protests grew and they became violent. Parliament was set on fire, the Supreme Court was torched, and Prime Minister Oli's office was attacked. On September 8th, 19 protesters were shot dead by state forces, most of them under 30. And the next day, the fury only intensified. By the time it was over, 74 people had died. The protests quickly evolved into something much bigger, a youth-led movement demanding political change. In that moment of crisis, Balen's popularity surged. He represented exactly what protesters were asking for, a new generation of leadership. On the 9th of September, Prime Minister Oli resigned. In the aftermath, something extraordinary happened. On the social media platform DeKoder, a channel called Youths Against Corruption, with 7,586 members, held a vote for Nepal's preferred interim Prime Minister. Former Chief Justice Sushila Karki was chosen for the role and was subsequently sworn in on September 12th, becoming Nepal's first woman Prime Minister. The Gen Z Revolution. Nepal is a very young country. More than half of its population is under 30, but the country's politics have long been dominated by leaders in their 60s and 70s. The 2026 election has changed that. On January 18, 2026, Balen Shah resigned as the mayor of Kathmandu and formally joined the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, the RSP, a centrist reformist party founded in 2022. The RSP then declared him their prime ministerial candidate. Rather than contesting from Kathmandu, where he was a superstar, where he knew every ward, where the crowds knew his name, he chose to travel 300 kilometers southeast to a rural constituency called Jhapa 5. Jhapa 5 was the home turf of KP Sharma Oli, the man whose government the Gen Z protesters had just burned down. Oli had held that seat for decades. He had the machine, the loyalty, the local networks, but Balen chose to fight him there anyway. On March 5, 2026, Nepal held its first general election since the uprising. The result in Jhapa 5 was not even close. Balendra Shah received 68,348 votes, while KP Sharma Oli received 18,734. Balen won by nearly 50,000 votes, almost 4 times Oli's total. Nationally, the RSP surged. Early counts showed the party leading in over 90 of the 165 directly elected seats. The Nepali Congress, Nepal's oldest party, won 17 seats only. Oli's Communist Party trailed with 7. RSP's dominance was total. Oli himself congratulated Balen on X, wishing him a smooth and successful tenure. For many analysts, this election represents something unprecedented in South Asia, a Gen Z-driven political revolution, a movement fueled by social media, anti-corruption sentiment, and frustration with traditional politics. Now, what does Balen promise? During the election campaign, Balen focused heavily on economic reform. His promises included creating over 1 million jobs within the next 5 to 7 years, doubling Nepal's per capita income from around $1,500 to $3,000, and investing heavily in education and healthcare. He also promised to reduce the massive wave of Nepali workers migrating abroad for employment. But delivering on these promises will not be easy. Nepal remains one of South Asia's poorest economies and is highly dependent on remittances sent home by workers overseas. Now, what does this mean for India and China? Nepal is not a large country. Its GDP is roughly $40 billion. Its army is modest, but its geography is extremely strategically consequential. Nepal sits in the Himalayas, the buffer zone between India and China. To its south is India, the world's most populous country. To its north is China, the world's second largest economy. And carved through that mountain terrain are passes, roads, and rivers that have shaped the security calculations of both powers for centuries. India remains Nepal's largest economic partner, while China has been expanding its influence through infrastructure investments and political outreach. Nepal's economy depends heavily on trade with India. But at the same time, Chinese investments in infrastructure have become increasingly important. In short, Whoever governs Nepal must carefully manage relations with both Delhi and Beijing. China's Belt and Road Initiative has been pushing infrastructure investments into Nepal for years. One of its flagship local projects was the Damak Industrial Park in Jhapa district, located near the sensitive border area known as the Siliguri Corridor. This narrow strip of land connects India's northeastern states to the rest of the country, and India considers this corridor incredibly important. When Balen released his election manifesto, the Damak Industrial Park was absent from it. That decision, dropping a BRI project from a manifesto before taking power, was a positive signal to New Delhi. But Balen has also made statements that alarmed India. In November 2025, while still serving as mayor, he posted a profanity-laden message on Facebook targeting India, China, the United States, and nearly every major Nepali political party. While the post was deleted under 30 minutes, it had already drawn 34,000 reactions and 12,000 comments in the 22 minutes it was online, with screenshots everywhere. Second, in 2023, he had displayed a Greater Nepal map in his mayoral office, referencing an irredentist claim to territories lost to British India under the 1860 Treaty of Sugauli. The territories in question include northern parts of India. These are not the acts of a conventional diplomat. And that unpredictability is what makes strategists in both New Delhi and Beijing watch him closely. The big question. Nepal faces huge challenges: economic stagnation, bureaucratic inertia, political factionalism, and enormous public expectations. For supporters, Balen represents a fresh start for Nepal's democracy, while critics are left wondering, can a political outsider actually deliver real change? Here's what we know with certainty. Nepal is about to hand power to a 35-year-old with a rap catalogue, an engineering PhD in progress, a walking stick as a political symbol, and a mandate so large it crushed a 4-time prime minister in his own backyard. The revolution that produced Balen Shah killed 74 people. It burned a parliament. It forced a prime minister out in 24 hours. And then it produced, through a discord vote in general election, one of the most unlikely political leaders the region has seen in generations. Balen Shah is many things: a rapper, an engineer, a disruptor. And he is about to run a country sandwiched between two of the world's most powerful nations.